Hey, this is Jimmie Tramel with the Tulsa World. I'm with Eric Bailey, also with the Tulsa World. We have something in common in that we both were the beat writers for University of Tulsa football when Steve Kragthorpe, I don't think it's exaggeration, Eric, to say saved the program.
That's right, Jimmy. You covered Tulsa 2003, 2004, Kragthorpe's first 2 years at Tulsa. I covered Tulsa 2005, 2006. His last 2 years coaching the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, and they were just abysmal during those first 2 years. He turned that program around. I think we don't see what Tulsa football did over the past 15 years, if not for those 4 years he was leading that football program.
Just to give people some context of where the program was before they hired Steve Kragthorpe, and that was a hire they had to get right. Props to the administration for making that hire at that time. But Eric, I think they played like 21 games against Division One competition the 2 years before Steve Kragthorpe was hired, and of those 21 games, they won one game. And the fans were so happy to win one game, they destroyed the goalpost basically, which is fun maybe to write about or to talk about, but it wasn't really fun if you were in the program at that time that you're celebrating one win. And some of the high school coaches, Bill Blankenship, Alan Trimble, were having a press conference saying, please don't give up TU football. That's where TU football was before Steve Kragthorpe.
Can you believe that? It took two high school coaches who won state championships trying to save the hometown team. And that's how bad it was. I mean, and you just think back to the early 90s, the glory years of Tulsa football, the wins over A&M, the wins over Iowa. That was a proud program just a decade earlier. And to see it fall
Yeah.
off like it did, it was really sad. And, and it just proves how quick a turnaround that was. 5 years later, after that press conference, they were celebrating under Coach Kragthorpe a Liberty Bowl championship, a Conference USA championship. And who knew that a decade later, after that press conference, after only winning one game, after having that long losing streak, you'd see a sparkling Case Athletic Complex, a brand new sparkling Chapman Stadium. It's incredible. And that doesn't happen if Steve Kragthorpe doesn't turn that program around.
And it's funny what desperation will do. They had one committed prospect, one recruit, Paul Smith, when they took over. And then so you're essentially, if you're the new staff, you're having to look under rocks, like who hasn't signed, who hasn't committed, who's still out there. And they hit on enough of those guys to come in with the remaining players, the returning players, and just kind of turn it around right away. It was kind of a Cinderella story that carried on forward, as you said. And hey, you were just talking to me before we started. I don't know when people are going to watch or listen to this, but a memorial service for celebration of life for Coach Kragthorpe will be Friday evening at the football complex, the football stadium. And you were just saying, like, a lot of people are coming in.
A lot of people. Paul Smith is planning on being there. James Killian, who quarterbacked that first year, 2003, he's coming in. You're and Paul Smith, of course. It was funny. I mean, if you don't mind, I want to go off on a tangent on Paul Smith. Paul Smith was the first recruit there. Steve Kragthorpe met with him the day after he arrived on campus, the day after his hiring, and offered him a scholarship. Said, "Your scholarship's still here." And Paul Smith said he walked into that office scared to death, not knowing if he was going to keep that scholarship offer alive. He said, "I was a scrawny 6 foot, 175-pound quarterback. I thought he was going to call me in the office to say, 'I'm sorry, we're not going to keep your scholarship.'" And he kept that promise alive. Paul Smith's going to be there. Judy McLeod, the athletic director at the time, she is there. She's going to be there. Bubba Cunningham, I've been told, is trying to come back.
Hmm.
Dave Kragthorpe, his father, he's coming back. Matt Wells, the offensive coordinator at Kansas State, has been given permission to leave fall camp to come back. His son, Brad Kragthorpe, who's the quarterback's coach for the Cincinnati Bengals, is being allowed to use the team jet to come back. James Killian, we mentioned him. He is the coach at Division III St. Olaf in Minnesota, who is getting ready for fall camp. He's going to come back. He lands in Tulsa at 12:30. He's going to fly back from Tulsa at 6:30. He's going to be here 6 hours, but he's coming back. so many people from Tulsa's past are coming back to remember Steve Kragthorpe. It's just amazing, and it just tells you the outreach that Coach Kragthorpe has, and the impact that this gentleman had on so many lives.
And you mentioned his father coming back. It was very much a family atmosphere during that time. Steve Kragthorpe's father was there the entire season, every year at every practice. A former college coach himself. Uh, I mean, there are so many walls put up in major college athletics now you can't see anything. I mean, I went to practice any day I wanted to. My kids came with me. Other coaches' kids were there. Eric, I'm sure you were there all the time also, but it was just you hope for that kind of relationship in any of these of sports beat jobs that we have.
Definitely. And I always got a kick out of it too, because there was always what they called the railbirds. There was always four elderly gentlemen who came to every practice. They were just
Yeah,
fans, not heavy boosters, just random fans. And they were senior citizens who were welcome to practice. And I'd go to practice and they were always there. They were just on the sideline. They'd watch practice and they were literally just fans. And they
I
were
know exactly who
welcome.
you're talking about. They were like Statler and Waldorf on the Muppet Show, like every day there.
But they were fans and they were
Yeah,
welcome. And you know what? They were allowed on the team jet to go to road games. I remember going to El Paso one time and they were there and they were just allowed to go on a road trip with them just to fly on the team plans. And they were just part of the family. And you mentioned the family atmosphere. And yes, I really feel for the Kragthorpe family. Dave Kragthorpe was one of the nicest gentlemen out there. I remember when they used to have golf outings for the media on media day, and I got to play in a foursome with Dave Kragthorpe, and we had a lot of fun and just hanging out with him. My heart hurts for him because I know he hurts this week too. And
yeah.
and how close is this family? Steve Kragthorpe and Cynthia Kragthorpe divorced shortly after his coaching career ended, but she is going to be in attendance tomorrow too. This Tulsa was a special place for this family, and we're going to see it this week.
Well, it's interesting the things you remember because a lot of stuff runs together. All these games run together. But I remember uh, they opened their Kragthorpe regime road game at Minnesota, and his first weekly press conference ever, where he previews the game. After it ends, he said, "Hey, let's make a run to the border." So after his press conference ended, we go across the street from TU to Taco Bell and have some tacos. I mean, with Kragthorpe and I, and so I'm sure you have many things like that you remember as well. That's not uh, X's and O's, blah blah blah, but more of a personal level.
It's funny because back then, and you don't see this, especially I cover Oklahoma now, so you really don't see it now, but I had a weekly call with him on Sundays after Saturday games. It was just me and him. He'd say, "Well, call me on Sunday. We'll talk more about the game." And, I could ask him anything we'd want. And we talk every Sunday. And you just don't see that. So we talk then, we talk Monday, we talk Tuesday, we talk Wednesday, we talk after every practice. And yes, we talk X's and O's, but we'd also just talk. And
Yeah,
that was always good. I remember when I went to Louisville, and I wrote about this week. I had to go up to Louisville to cover the high school All-American game because it was when Blake Griffin was up there when he was a high school senior and he was playing in the All-American game, the McDonald's game, and it happened to be in Louisville. So I went up there and then I made a sidetrack over to the University of Louisville, and he gave me a big hug, showed me his office was immaculate. And then we talked about his Tulsa days, and he told me some of the stuff he didn't tell me when I covered him. And he made me laugh because I said, I never saw your office at TU. And he never had the Case Athletic Complex office because he left before that was complete. And he told me, he laughed. He said, "I never showed you my office at TU because I was embarrassed." He said, "We always met in the lobby because I didn't ever want anyone to see my office at TU because he was embarrassed. He never had a nice office." And
hmm.
Matt Wells told me a funny story too because he said, when Steve and Matt recruited to Skelly Stadium, he said every January and February they always put like construction tape on the north end zone because when recruits came, they said, "We can't take you up to the north end zone because we're working on it. We're working on it. We can't go in the stadium because they're working on it or they're doing construction." But every January and February, they'd put construction tape that way because they didn't want to take people into the end zone. So because the facilities, they recruited to really poor facilities, but that just tells you a lot of what they did to get players to come to Tulsa. They recruited to a tough. They had tough resources, but Steve, I really enjoyed just those conversations. In 2010, he really wanted the Tulsa job, and after when Todd Graham left to go to Pittsburgh, he really wanted that job. And I remember the phone call I got. I don't know where I was, but I was in Tulsa. I think I was leaving a basketball game, and he called me and said, "Eric, they're not gonna hire me. They're not even gonna interview me." And he was so disappointed. And I just remember saying, "You want to talk about it?" And he said, "Well, come over to the house." And I went over there and I sat with him in his living room. And of course, it was for an interview, but he just wanted to talk more than being interviewed. He wanted to talk. And he was so disappointed because I could tell he wanted that job again. He had a tough time at Louisville. He wanted to be a head coach again, and he just really wanted to reignite things at Tulsa. And that was probably the most heartfelt talk I've ever had with him because he really, I could tell then Tulsa meant a lot to him. And that was just a tough talk with him. Just see him just really want to rebuild things at Tulsa. Now, for Tulsa's sake, Bill Blankenship was a really good hire for them. And you got to credit Steve though for what he did for really setting the bar high and setting the foundation for Todd Graham, for Bill Blankenship, for Phil Montgomery, and now for Coach Wilson.
Yeah. Eric, I think we're caught up on Coach Kragthorpe. Our sympathies to his family. It should be a nice ceremony on Friday. And anything else, or you're all good here?
No, I just you hit the nail on the head. All our sympathies. I mean, he meant a lot to the team. He was only at TU for 4 years, and you think about it, his tenure was short, but it really was impactful. You don't have that stadium, you don't have that complex if not for him. And just by seeing everyone coming back, it just really shows how much he meant to that program.
Yeah. Thank you all for watching or listening.